Our next one is titled, I've had a crush on another man for a long time now. I've had an infatuation with another man for as long as I've known him. I'm married and so is he. I'm having a hard time shaking it. I've never told anyone, not a soul, and it's just completely eating at me and getting the best of me. I do not ever plan to act on my feelings or ever confess my feelings to him, but I literally find myself fantasizing a lot about him. My plan of action is to keep my head on straight and ride it out until the feelings fade. I have to keep telling myself that this whole thing is just an escape or a what if the grass could be greener situation of wondering, and that my crush has flaws as well and not to romanticize him. I don't know, I feel so juvenile and stupid because it's been years now and it's not going away, and I find myself crying alone in my car if he does something nice for me or if he lends a listening ear. I just feel like I wish I never developed this crush and I can just go about my freaking life without feeling like a 13-year-old girl with unrequited love. I think this is actually quite horrifying to me. For me, this would be the equivalent of emotional cheating. And I know that some people might argue, hey, but nothing's actually happened. She hasn't done anything. It's all in her head. Thought crime is not a thing. I agree, actually, that thought crime is not a thing. But I do think that if you are continuing to engage in a friendship with someone that you are developing feelings for, when you're in a marriage and when that person is in a marriage, then you're already doing something that's very, very wrong. And you should stop what you're doing and reconsider. I would not... Like, I honestly, to be completely fair, I cannot imagine myself being in this situation at all. But if I were to try to put myself in her shoes, then probably the first thing that I would do is the moment that I noticed that there were feelings like this getting in the way, then I would probably reduce my contact dramatically with this person, if not completely cut off all contact. And I would immediately try to invest a lot more in my marriage and in my relationship with my husband, because there the question is, what is it about that other interaction that feels so exciting and new and fresh and different that I'm not, I guess maybe that is the answer. Maybe the answer is that the interaction does just feel fresh and new. And there's something about when, especially when you've been married for a while, that maybe your relationship is just not quite as exciting anymore. And if that's what you're getting out of it, then that's something that you can change. You can, it's completely within your power to change that. But I just think that the more you dwell on things like this, the more of a ticking time bomb you are. The likelihood that you will actually decide to eventually act on these feelings is higher and higher. The longer you spend thinking about it, the longer you spend fantasizing about it, the more times you spend sitting in your car crying over it without telling yourself, hey, you know what, I'm being ridiculous, I need to stop, and I will just cut off all contact and move on with my life. I think you can decide not to entertain particular thoughts or fantasies if you want to, and that means that you notice the moment that your head is heading in that direction and you go, okay, no, I will go do something else, and you distract yourself with something else until your brain stops going there and you stop having that feeling. I suspect that there is this idea that fantasies are okay, and I think that the majority of fantasies are okay so long as you don't fixate on them. An example of this might be, you know, suicidal ideation. For a lot of, like, when it comes to figuring out how serious someone is, how much of a suicide risk they are, it really depends on exactly how deep and detailed they got into the fantasy. And the more they fixate on it, the more of a plan they have, the more ideas they have about how they would do it, how other people would react and how it would feel and so on, then the more of a risk they are because they've spent so long thinking about it. And that's exactly what I feel is happening here to a large extent. The more you spend time thinking about it, the more you fantasize about it, then the more likely it is that you will eventually at some point be like, yeah, you know what, maybe I can give it a try. And the moment that you decide to do that, then you're kind of reprehensible for me from a moral standpoint. And you've committed a great evil, not only to your husband, but to your kids, if you have any, and to yourself, because you made a commitment to your husband, and that should be worth more. So that's how I would deal with this one. Some people have interesting statements about this. One person says, sounds like he's not like he's giving you what you're not getting at home. And to me, in some ways, that sounds like you're trying to excuse a little bit or to justify the fact that she has these feelings for someone else. I think if it were a man who said the same thing in terms of, yeah, but the woman's like, she's giving me attention and she's a lot nicer to me and she doesn't nag me, or, you know, whatever stereotype you have, I think everyone would say, yeah, this is not really good enough. Yes, I understand that people, when they cheat, are looking for something, whatever that thing is, that there's some element of thrill to it. But nah. The moment that you get close to saying, yeah, maybe there's a point, maybe there's a reason for it, then I think you're entertaining the wrong kind of thought as well. Some person does agree to this, and she actually says OP needs to work on her marriage relationship, maybe something like couples counseling. I don't know that couples counseling is necessarily the path forward, but it really depends on what types of problems I guess they're experiencing in their marriage. And then some person does agree with me. She says, I'm sorry, but that's a clear-cut definition of emotional cheating in my books. You keep going back to this man and continually having feelings for him for years. If I found out that my husband had these feelings you mentioned for another woman, it would absolutely be enough for me to leave. Cut ties with this man completely or leave your husband. It's completely selfish of you and unfair to your husband. Just because you haven't said or physically done anything that you consider cheating does not mean that you aren't cheating. And I agree with this one. I think the real danger in being stuck having this type of fantasy is that it fundamentally means that you're going to automatically just not be investing quite as much into your marriage or into your relationship as you should be, because you're spending quite a lot of time caught up in your head with fantasies of a different future and a different life. And if that is how you're dealing with your current life, that you're like, this sense of escapism is a really dangerous one, because it stops you from trying to fix problems that you see in front of you, or from trying to actually live in the moment with the people that are around you. You're not present there anymore. And if you're not present, then obviously your marriage is going to stagnate over time as well. Like, it's not going to be that great because you're not in it. And so that's this idea of a spiral. And then you have this really interesting person who says, well, YOLO, the grass could be greener. So YOLO is short for you only live once, for anyone who doesn't know. And then someone replies, are you encouraging her to make moves on a married man? And that person says, as far as we know, this is the only life we have. If she wants to take that chance and fulfill her desires, then do it. I'm not encouraging anything but living the life that you want to. If my partner's parents didn't do just that, he wouldn't be alive. His father was married and met his mom, and I'm thankful for my amazing husband. Some big part of me thinks that this person is trolling. And the reason that they commented this, and the reason they commented it in this way, is just to get, kickstart a fight on the internet and have fun pissing people off. Definitely, obviously, yes, there are sometimes kids who are born out of cheating, and those kids deserve to live as any other child deserves to live, and they're great people to have on the planet. However you want to excuse that, it's like, yes, fair enough, sometimes some good comes out of a bad situation, and I would not say that person did not deserve to exist because his dad created a terrible, cheated on his wife. Fair enough. But the argument that, oh, well, okay, you know what, I got my husband out of this situation, so who knows what other kinds of great people will come from the world if everyone just broke their promises all the time and betrayed their spouses. That's not a very good argument. That's not a good one at all. People take it really personally. One person says, sounds like your father-in-law was an ass, so you would be okay with your husband leaving you because he meets someone that he thinks is better? Or be okay if a woman tries to steal your husband because she has a crush on him? And another one says, so you support cheating, murder, child abuse, sexual assault because YOLO, so act out on your desires? I hope I'm misunderstanding you, but if this is truly how you feel, do the world a favor and seek help. And obviously, I think that's a bit extreme. This person does stand up for what she's saying, and she says that if my husband wants to leave me, that's his choice. He's not an evil, bad person for making that choice. No one is obligated to stay in a relationship. And I think she has a little bit of a point where she's saying, you know what, if the relationship is not working out, then people can choose to leave the relationship. I actually do think that you are obligated to stay in a relationship when you get married to someone, because that's the commitment that you make. And I don't think that it's good enough to say, you know what, I got bored. That's not a reason to end a marriage. There has to be a lot more to it than that. If a marriage becomes toxic, if people become abusive, if you're really severely unhappy and depressed and you believe that that's down to your marriage for some reason and you're unable to work past it, then I understand the point of saying, okay, you're not obligated to spend the rest of your life miserable, and maybe both of you are miserable, and you'll be happier if you change something. But no, I don't think that that's an argument for cheating. And when she says you only live once, so you might as well try it out, I think for a lot of people, the thrill of cheating is a very momentary sense of pleasure, instant gratification. You have this one encounter and then you enjoy it, but then immediately afterwards, as you should be, you are covered in guilt and shame. And I couldn't imagine how people do that, and how they move on with their lives, and how they can wake up in the morning and look themselves in the eye in the mirror without feeling like the most garbage human being to exist on the planet, to be honest. So no, I think if you are truly, truly unhappy in your marriage, then you should do absolutely everything that you can to fix it with your husband on board. And then if you still don't manage to fix it after all of the effort that you could possibly invest, then you break up. And then if you want to pursue a relationship, you can do that. But the moment that you start pursuing a relationship while you're still in your marriage, and you haven't done anything to try and fix the marriage first, then you're just a terrible person. There's no other excuse for it. And then she also says, we're continuing this fight that they have with each other, because I think it's a little bit entertaining. So another person replies, I'm sure you would be totally cool with your husband leaving you. OP should not try and break up another person's marriage, no matter how happy it will make her. That's awful behavior. And then the person who thinks that, you know what, you live only once, so you gotta try it, she says that she would be upset if her husband left her, and then angry. Definitely a cycle of emotions, but it's his decision, and I hope that he would respect mine. A third party cannot break up a marriage. Someone in the marriage did that. You can't point the finger at them. They didn't owe you that loyalty. I think I really have such a hard time with this, because I kind of understand to some extent where she's coming from, even if she's saying it in this really offensive, inflammatory way. Yes, if someone behaves in a particular way involving cheating that ends up breaking up their marriage, then that was their fault, that was their prerogative. But no, I do think that if you go out of your way to target a married man, then that also makes you a terrible human being. It's the idea of you have values that you should be living by, and yes, you should criticize other people for just being immoral, behaving in a way that we don't want as a society. So no, yes, someone in the marriage did do that, and they maybe carry 80% of the responsibility, but then the other party does carry some of the responsibility as well, and it makes you a really evil, selfish person to have that and to choose to do that. So that's one way of looking at it. Another person comments then to the broader thread. She says, the grass is always greener where it is watered, nurtured, and maintained and cared for. And I really like this as a point, because ultimately it's a really poetic way of saying that if you invest time in your marriage and in your relationship and in your husband, and actually maintain that and nurture it and water it, then you're going to feel very different about the situation. And probably the only reason that you think the grass is greener over there is because you're not looking after what you already have, which is great. And then the final comment of this one that I'll read out. Nothing wrong with having a crush. It's all about the fantasy. Let's be realistic here. If you ever decide to get with your crush, it would most likely not live up to your expectations. So enjoy the thrill and allow yourself to feel the feels, but know that it's just a fantasy. He has a wife and you have a husband. This wouldn't end well. I think you should do some deep thinking about what's missing from your current relationship and try to implement ways to regain that spark for your husband. I've been in the same situation, except I used it to my advantage with my husband. My crush motivated me to enhance my sex life, to relate more to my husband, and it taught me to appreciate what I do have. It obviously worked, because now I'm pregnant with number 3. My husband and I have been together for 20 years, and it takes work to maintain any long-term relationship, but I will never forget the advice that I came across by an 80-year-old couple. The secret to their lifelong success was never falling out of love at the same time. All relationships have ebbs and flows. You get what you put in. I like a lot of what she says in this comment, especially the part that all relationships will have seasons that they go through, and some periods of life are going to be more challenging than others. Sometimes you're dealing with stressors, sometimes you've just had kids. You know, every single very big life change that you go through as a couple will have some influence on you and on your relationship. And it's normal to have these periods of struggle and then to work through them. I like that as a statement. I really hate the idea of enjoy the thrill and allow yourself to feel the feels. I don't think that you should be a slave to your emotions. And I think that the moment you recognize that you are thinking and feeling something that is harmful to yourself and to your marriage, then you should stop from thinking that and from entertaining that thought. Like I said, the more time you invest in the fantasy, the more likely it is that you will decide to actually engage in it. And that's really dangerous when you're talking about something like cheating, which has the potential of not only ruining your marriage, severely damaging your husband on an emotional level. Maybe like if you have kids, making the situation for them completely untenable, as well as ruining someone else's marriage, having the same impact on his kids and so on. This is one of those circumstances where I would say the temptation is just not worth it. And you should do absolutely everything that you can to control the urge and the thought and the desire that you have in your head.